what we've got here is, they call it a new low in hacking, and you feel like with this ransomware attack, Joe, even the ransomwarers, the attackers themselves, are kind of backing off from this, because in all of their dark circles, even the other people, their peer groups, who they tend to sort of get into trophyism and showing off about this, that's very much part of their modus. They like to sort of behave like a punk rock band, and boast about things. That's all part of their fear generation. But what you had was this ransomware attack that was happening while we were away, a multinational nursery chain called Kido, data breach and extortion, which was involving highly sensitive children's data. Now, when you get into children, you're moving away from, trying to get money, extort money from the bad, the big corporates who are rich anyway, moving towards child abuse. And once you start doing that, even in a prison, the child abusers are in their own wing, aren't they? And do you feel that they've almost scared themselves?
Well, as you said, they have totally backtracked. They said, oh, we're sorry that we basically attacked children, which is what they've done. And they've used this ransomware as that it's got huge emotional leverage on both parents and the nursery itself, which is a bit different to attacking like a huge organization where you're just in it for the money.
Yeah.
It's
is this stupid attackers just who are so naive, they're just not really we're watching some of the arrests starting to come in, and we'll talk a bit about Jaguar Land Rover, and you're starting with Marks and Spencers. The people who are being arrested, and obviously they're not guilty yet, they've got to face a jury in a year's time, who are going to probably send them away for 25 years of most of their adult life. And I'm sure some of them were just having fun. And here you're seeing with the attack on basically children and parents. Are they just stupid, or?
I think that there's a kind of emotional cutoff that can happen. That kind of very online life, or gaming, or even in sort of offline life, in road rage. People, very reasonable people in the privacy of their own car will behave in very, very different ways to the way that they would behave face to face. And I think sometimes the suffering of the victims is something that the perpetrators just are emotionally cut off from. And like Joe, the Kido nursery story, appalling. I'm very interested in the emotional impact of cybercrime on the victims, and this was one where it's all about that. And also we, in technical terms, or in cybercrime terms, you talk about the ransomware attack. That is one type of extortion. I will unlock your data as the provider, Kido, if you give me money. And then there's double extortion. If you don't, I will publish that data. And then there is triple and quadruple extortion, where you're going to the parents and the carers of those young children and saying, we've got your data, your child's data, and we're going to publish it. So that is a triple extortion there.
Joe,
and the parallel,
wow,
that there are two parallels that come to mind here. One was a major ransomware attack of in Finland, the biggest mental health provider got ransomwared, and there was exactly the same technique. They'd go after the patients and say, we've got your mental health records, how do you feel now? Pay us. And there was the same horror and revulsion among the cyber criminal community there. Like, that is below the belt, that is unacceptable. And then there was also a hack of an Australian Medibank, where the government actually took some very effective action to prevent that data going further than the dark web, which we can talk about later.
Joe, I don't like to get into the discrimination of Gen Z and different, I'm old, you're young, bloody, I don't think that's fair, because we're all intelligent people. Older people are capable of learning things, but just in terms of like the generation that lives on the internet, shares names, addresses, phone numbers, pictures of each other, does it matter?
I think it does.
Yeah, sorry, it was a rhetorical question,
Yeah.
and I will
Yeah, sure.
add to that.
Go on.
This was names, addresses, pictures, but also
Yeah.
dates of birth, medical information. And I can remember with my own children at school, the teachers saying, let's not categorize them, let's not put things on record in their school records at exploratory stages that may have an impact on them as adults later in life.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously it was sort of non-consensual, right? If
Yes.
you want to create an Instagram account or something and put your name and address and everything online, then you can. But also having that data somewhere where you think is really secure, and then someone basically taking it and using it as extortion to get money from you is just completely.
And there's
they
two parts.
have picked on the most vulnerable people. They've
Oh,
picked
yes.
on children, which is
I also
who aren't even
I also think parents are vulnerable.
Yeah,
if
of
you're,
course, that's your child.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
your child. You're going to do everything you can to protect them, and you're most likely to pay the ransom because
Absolutely.
that's your
That was
that's
my
your
question
child.
to Emily. Is it
Absolutely.
realistic to us? You know, we're getting a lot of brinkmanship happening now. You can see it. A whole retail organisation like Marks and Spencer's has stopped their online operations for several months because they're not going to bloody pay the ransom. Everyone's being kind of macho about this and saying, you know, don't pay the bloody ransom. If you start paying the bloody ransom, they're going to just keep doing this and keep doing this. And you can play this brinkmanship, I suppose, if you've got a trillion dollar car factory or you've got a $1 trillion retail business. Is it realistic to ask parents of children
I
not
think it's
to
an
pay?
incredibly difficult ask. It's most similar to the spate of kidnappings and piracy that we saw in East Africa, off the coast of East Africa, a number of years ago. When you have a family member who is in danger, it's a lot to ask that you don't pay the ransom. I think that also what we're seeing by the stand that has been taken by Marks and Spencer's and presumably Jaguar Land Rover as well, is when you don't pay the ransom, it really hurts your business. You know, Marks and Spencer's at one point was estimated to have lost half of its value.
I've been feeling this personally. I love cars. I love car stuff. I live in Oxford. I hate it that our manufacturing industry in Oxford has basically had to be exported to people who know better, like BMW. I think there are a few crown jewels in this country that really are kind of holding us together as a country. I think Marks and Spencer's is one of them, and I think Jaguar Land Rover is another one. I'm very worried about Rolls-Royce and some of our banking industry. What do you think?
I agree with you, and I also agree with Joe that sometimes with the big corporate attacks, it's easy to dehumanize it. It's like, oh, it's a big business, it'll be fine. But actually, the people who are trying to respond to that, and there were lots of reports at the Marks and Spencer's hack, managers who are going without sleep, who are just working 24 hours a day under huge stress, and there is a massive human cost there. I think something that you pointed out to me, Luce, over the Kido nursery attack versus the Jaguar Land Rover, is the Kido cyber attack, awful though it is. Probably the doors of that nursery would be open the next day. They would be able to welcome the children and do their job, although they wouldn't have their contact with their parents in the same way. But Jaguar Land Rover and Marks and Spencer's, aspects of their business have been brought to a standstill for many weeks, and that has an enormous impact on their ability to continue. The government in the UK has authorised a bailout package, not for Jaguar Land Rover, but for their suppliers who could go out of business because Jaguar, their main customer, has just been brought to a standstill.
Yeah. And we're not talking as well about the other organisations. There's a logistics company that we were talking about, 150 years old, put completely out of business and will never recover from that, employing hundreds of people. So question for you in the comments, please. You know, are those of you who are parents or looking forward to becoming parents, if a nursery was attacked, you were contacted by ransomers, would you pay the ransom?